To my audience, this isn't one of my traditional broadcasts. I had someone come up to me and ask me a poignant question to explain a statement I had made between why I believe there is melding between a very antagonistic, strong-leaning, extremely left-leaning party and what many would deem a globalist party, and how I can align those two so closely, and what I meant by that when I defend against what would also be considered a neocon or extremist right, and what's the parallel between those two, and why that definition is so important to understand in today's politics. And without understanding it, you can't understand why I cringe every time I hear the word democracy. To understand this concept will put everything into very clear focus as to what's happening in today's political, what may appear 50-50 realm, but there's other mechanisms in play, my friends. And so sit back and hold on to what many would consider the mental illness of today's political landscape. This won't be easy to hear for some, but absolutely critical to understand, and that's the story I'll bring you in just a few seconds. So I'm going to talk about politics, and I'm going to start on mental illness. I know. It's not that far of a leap, trust me. This is in the National Institute of Mental Health, just so we get through some statistics. A lot of people don't realize, according to the National Institute of Health, that the average here in the United States, if the 59.3 million people, 23% of the U.S. population, have some form of mental illness. The majority of that being functional mental illness, so they can function in day-to-day lives. If you were going to this article here on Medium, which I don't generally use, we're going to go to the next portion of what's important to understand. IQ. IQ distribution in the United States. I'll tie this all together, don't worry. The IQ scale. 130 to 145 is genius. But let's just take a general sense. 100 to 115 is above average. 100 and below is below average. Here's how it breaks out. We're about 50-50 in the United States. 100 and above, 50%. 100 and below, 50%. About an even split. Now we got to go left and right. In the United States, it's about 50-50. Now, how does this all tie together? There's some stronger mechanisms that people understand. The country's 50-50. And they play off of that, because they understand these mechanisms better than anyone else. And they know how to play off the extremist portion of both parties. Left-wing extremism linked to psychopathy and narcissism. As a matter of fact, they've done studies on this. Or else why would you do studies on it? Because you're trying to control a population. Understanding left-wing authoritarianism, relation to dark personality traits, altruism, and social justice commitment. You see, social justice warriors are normally referred to as left-leaning. We've seen that through the Biden administration. And how many of those would ever be considered right-leaning? Well, virtually zero. So they tapped in and tuned in, and they know the exact audience they were speaking to. But yet, in this study, they were called authoritarian. But that terminology is applied to the right in today's political landscape. And that, too, is by design. It's a twisted and warped psychology. And to understand that they're applying that psychology is to understand the political landscape. Just bear with me. I'm going to simplify this here quickly. Based on existing research, we expected individuals with higher levels of left-wing authoritarianism to also report higher levels of narcissism. Think about that statement for a minute. Go into social media, and you'll quickly understand what that means. As a result of new data, study authors Anne Crispin and Alex Bertrams have coined a new term for such psychological behavior, the dark ego vehicle principle. According to the principle, individuals with dark personalities, such as high narcissistic and psychopathic traits, are attracted to certain forms of political and social activism, which they can use as a vehicle to satisfy their own ego-focused needs instead of actually aiming at social justice and equality. So social justice warriors and the likes of people on The View and Jimmy Kimmel, people have trouble understanding how come they can stay so vigilant, so focused, but yet sometimes even show no sense of reality to what many can consume as what's happening in the world around them. And there's been events that would even confuse people more that I'll get to, such as COVID and the Charlie Kirk assassination. How could people be so staunchly against a man being assassinated and show such despise and hatred to him in such tragedy? Well, this is one of the principles behind it. And why it was so important, I start to explain what's happening in this world around you so you get a better understanding and why they warp the terminology. The Communist Directive of 1943 labeled them Nazi or fascist because if you label them what your belief system is, this has been well thought out and well planned. Because those who wish to tear down Western society understand the playbook very well. It's important to understand one vital thing. The key to grasping the root of the leftist problem, left ideologies, socialism, Marxism, communism, globalism, wokeism, attracts, well, mentally unhinged people. It sometimes creates them, but mostly it gives dangerous and unstable people a home, a club, a place to feel as if they're the majority and that they are on the right side of history. But most often it's not the majority, nor are the neocons, nor the far-right extremists, never the majority. But they could be meant to feel that way. It's a society, a club. And they were driven by mainstream media who made them feel as if they were the majority until this most recent Trump presidency, of which then they suddenly realized it wasn't the majority. People were woken up to the illusion because mainstream media and their ratings weren't what it appeared to be. Well, even crime statistics weren't what they appeared to be. None of the statistics or the reality was what it appeared to be. It was all skewed. It was a lie. It was actually the minority opinion. It was just made to make you believe it was majority. These were all stunts. They were tricks. And they're still working. Now, before we move forward on this more educational video today, again, this was at request of so many of you who asked me to define this dichotomy of what's happening in politics right now. I hope you'll help me to continue to beat the algorithm by making sure your bell is checked all, by subscribing if you're new here, by putting a comment, by sharing the video, by joining as a member, by moving forward into Restricted Republic, your ultimate means of support. Its platform is exploding. And over there, it's audience-funded news. There's no commercials, no interruptions, exclusive content of things we can't publish anywhere else but at Restricted. And because of that, it is absolutely exploding because people don't want to listen to mainstream media anymore. They actually want what is audience-funded news. And also, thank you so much for everyone that is supporting what has turned out to be an amazing sponsor of so many of these videos, which is Chapter. Just so you know, it's Medicare enrollment period. It's coming up. It's October 15th to December 7th. Why is that significant and why is Chapter significant? They helped me to bring you this video today because they're free. It's a free phone call, 805-619-5011. What are they? They're licensed Medicare professionals. During this time of year, seniors get absolutely bombarded with robocallers, mailers. And why? Because it's open enrollment now. Medicare annual enrollment. Again, October 15th to December 7th. How do you get through all the options? Some things just disappear this time of year. Some of the plans just go away. They change every single year. Well, Chapter are the experts in this. And by calling and making a free phone call, in under 20 minutes, they can help choose for you and show you all the options as to what the best plan is. And if you don't check, even if you think you have the best plan right now, you can lose your doctors or you can end up overpaying. So what's a free phone call hurt? Most agents, they're designed to just steer you to the plan that makes them the most money. That is not what Chapter does. They find the best plan for you. They're just designed different. The average person who calls them saves $1,100 a year. And remember, they can review all these plans for you in under 20 minutes. That is how their system's designed, and you're talking to a live person. If you're already on the best plan, they'll tell you that. If not, they'll help you switch. But remember, don't wait till the last minute. Call today so you can enjoy the rest of the year with peace of mind that you are in the best Medicare plan. That enrollment period, October 15th to December 7th. That phone number, 805-619-5011. That cost, $0. If you think you got the best plan, maybe you do. Let them tell you that. If they find out you don't, they're going to help put money in your pocket. I don't see how this isn't a win-win by calling that phone number. Give Chapter a call today. But now let's get back to this broadcast. So why does this system work that attracts these people to this club? Because in a normal society, that's fine. People can have their own ideas all day long, and they can communicate healthy, vet out their ideas, and move along in their daily lives. But in an unhealthy system, that movement metastasizes. And it's a relentless magnet that pulls the ugliest elements of society together. And that ugly element of society, when bound together with unrestrained, take the NGOs. They're not bound by rules or laws that governments are, and they operate as a parallel form of government that often disagrees with our own U.S. government. Very often doesn't agree with our own Constitution. They are funding these protests and many times these riots, and we see the Trump administration fighting against it. Well, when that's magnetized against the very same people that are looking for a club to join in, guess what happens? You have a tinderbox. And these people often view themselves as victims. A victim of what? Well, a victim of a society they believe is working against them. A society led by whom? The U.S. government. Led by our Constitution. Because they're funded by NGOs that don't believe in Western society or our Constitution. Now you start to understand why they think that we're the target. And then become more organized and more powerful. And why they are looking for a club. Why they appear to be the rejects of society. Not necessarily. They were just looking for a place to belong. And they found somewhere with open arms. Unfortunately, the place they found doesn't believe in the ideals of the great Republic of the United States of America. And now President Trump has declared that they are a domestic terrorist organization. And I hope you understand why he did that. Because the ideals of the organization is exactly that. So maybe 20 years ago, the false left-right paradigm was appropriate. And that's what our nation's quandary was. It was truly a left Democrat versus right Republican. But that doesn't apply anymore. Because the left has drifted off more towards a globalist agenda. And the far left has become a meld of left and globalist to be one. And we're seeing that with the NGOs funding so many of the leftist candidates. And where does that mission start? Why have they fallen so far away from what you and I would understand as being normal constitutional principles? And the right somewhat has stayed with the Constitution, or the principles of the great Republic of the United States of America. And that divide is growing larger and more incendiary. But then you have the neocons, who like to be engaged in foreign wars at all times. And I would contest that they're not that far from globalists themselves. And hence the quandary becomes even larger. And in comes President Trump, who fights to end foreign wars. Sometimes peace through strength, temporary engagement to end engagement, tariff of foreign adversaries to stop foreign intrusion. Conservatives are not neocons. Neocons are neoconservatives. That is a story for a different day. But let's make one important distinction here. There are people who consider themselves tied to the liberal left who are not leftists. They're centrists. And there are people who consider themselves far right, but they're centrists. And there's more of us than most would imagine. In many ways, I consider myself a moderate, not far right. In many cases, I consider myself a moderate. All I believe is you can do what you want. I'm just not going to fund it. Don't break the laws of the United States, and we don't have any issues. But I believe in the Constitution, God, country, and family. Don't violate those principles, and we're all good. But do I believe in any form of globalism whatsoever in my country? Absolutely not. But many people falsely believe that globalism is free market capitalism, and it is not. Globalism is socialism. This is where it gets a little clouded now. But if you understand that, Zoran Mandami is a socialist. He believes in fundamentals that globalists believe, and many of the Justice Democrats believe the same. They are not capitalists in any way, shape, or form, and the far left-leaning side of the party believes in the same, and hence the separation is becoming larger. It is built first on corporations because of artificial government charters and government protections. The central bank bailout. But when the government bailed out the banks, well, the too big to fail is a socialist policy. That isn't a capitalist policy. A capitalist policy will be, if you fail, you failed. Bye-bye. That's when our government started making its first mistakes. You can be too big to fail. You can be too big and fail. Period. Central banks are the part. Central banking is one of the primary facets of communism, or the Communist Manifesto, if you want to call it that. By the way, a lot of this is coming from Alt Market, who wrote this, and I absolutely freaking love this article because he and I ultimately agree on so many of our principles. Now, he takes on some points a more radical turn, and I'm not going to frame in those points. I'm trying to keep this a little bit more centrist of an approach, just to be fair to my audience. But on many of these points, we implicitly agree. Furthermore, he states, globalism forces nations into interdependence instead of advocating for self-sufficiency, which is what President Trump pushes for, which some fight against, because we're then become isolated, and you need to be part of the world economy in order to survive, which is absolutely not true. We became part of the world economy. We did not need to become part of the world economy. But who pushes for that? The left pushes to be part of the global economy. It's why the left and the globalists are a perfect marriage. They always have been. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy about it. World Economic Forum, doesn't it all start to make perfect sense? The sustainable goals, socialist goals. Together, we will control hunger and poverty and education and gender equality, clean water, energy, banking, economic growth. What does that mean? One government will control everything, and you'll be happy because we'll take care of you. But we will also control everything for you. And when you look at these, who would represent this? The left or the right? If you said the right, you'd be wrong. These are leftist ideals. It's why the left and the globalists or those who stand up against Western government, aka the U.S. Constitution, have become one in the same. And it's why you've seen such a separation between the two parties, and why you've seen such a radical divesting, and why when we get these protests now brewing up, they become so much more incendiary. And that's the danger in our current political landscape, driven by forces that you hear time and time again, because open borders is driven by those that wish to divest in Western government. It has always been a designing force, by the way, by technical term, entropic immigration. But we don't need to get that technical today. And what pushed all this? Well, the woke movement and woke ideals. It was breaking down of society because it pushed us further away from God, country, and Constitution. It ultimately pushed us away from our Western form of government, the founding father principles, as far humanly away as they could. But there's a confusing, as he calls it, juxtaposition, which is a great way to put it. They believe they are not free until they are allowed to entertain their darkest fetishes. Now, how does that make sense? At the same time, although they want to entertain their darkest fetishes, they want to control the behaviors of everyone else. Well, how does that make sense? Well, COVID, they wanted to make sure that they had their security, their protection. We always joke about wearing 15 masks to keep themselves healthy and safe. But you didn't have a choice. You had to wear yours at all times, controlling your behaviors, your attitudes, but yet being able to live out their own fantasy insecurities. It's where you saw the ultimate living out of left versus right. And then you saw the Charlie Kirk assassination. You saw the fracture in those two events alone of conservative and leftist. True difference between viewpoints of freedom. Most leftists applauded the lockdowns, the mandates, the requirements. They loved it. The conservatives despised it. Who feared COVID the most? Who revered in voracious power that was given to government during COVID? Left or right? Who wanted more of the government to have power during that time? Left or right? Who demanded the conservatives be fined, imprisoned, forced to comply, silenced, censored? Well, we found out now it was the left. Those same mechanisms were driven globally across the world. It showed you that the left was complicit in the same mechanisms driven all over the globe. The same political mechanisms. They were one in the same. And then the darker side came out. Charlie Kirk's assassination. Leftists applauded this, danced, cheered. The strangest thing we've ever seen. Hate or love him, to applaud it was evil. Not misguided, not misunderstood, not well-meaning, but plain and simple evil. Our forefathers would have rolled over in their graves. John Adams once stated, our Constitution was not only made for a moral and religious people, it was wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. Our Constitution was not made for globalists. That is why you are seeing this rising tension between one side and another. Our Constitution does not provide for this form of government. It provides for only a moral and religious people. The Charlie Kirk assassination defined that and why so many of us fear it's only going to get worse. Because by its very definition, our Constitution does not provide for any peace or resolution. At bottom line, everything the political left champions falls perfectly in line with the globalist vision for the future. They are not separate, they're the same organism. When you see an Antifa thug, an NGO activist, what you are looking at is an appendage of a larger agenda that is no longer simply a left and right paradigm. It is not some patriot trying to be heard. It is those that wish to overturn the U.S. Constitution, the great Republic of the United States of America, the last bastion of Western government. And that is the paradigm of left and globalists merging into the same. As the amazing author Brandon Smith states, horrific entity. Do you believe the extreme left and the globalists are now one in the same? Yes or no? Can't wait to see your comments below, and I really hope this help you to understand what's happening in today's political landscape. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.